Hey, what's up everybody, welcome back to Anthem. So a few days back we were talking about the loot in Anthem and how BioWare will come in with an update in a few days. Well, it seems that they may have come, and there's an update posted right now on Twitter by Ben Irving, and it contains a lot of details regarding this update. By the way, the update might drop today or at the very least on the 1st of March. So we're going to go over it in just a bit. It contains a lot of juicy details. I'm so excited to bring it to you guys because it contains many of the changes that we, the fan base, have asked for. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you do, a like would be super appreciated, and let's get to it. So the post itself is right here. I'm also going to link it down in the description box, and it pretty much begins with: hey y'all, first of all, thank you for all the feedback around the loot drops. This is what we have heard. First, many inscriptions are not useful to the item that are attached to. Due to this, players need to get many masterworks of the same item to find a good one, quote unquote. Players want the frequency of masterwork drops to increase the help with the above, or they want us to change how masterwork inscriptions work so that they are more useful. And definitely between these two, I will take any of them. And I've talked about this extensively, about having good loot drops but having them more reduced, or having more loot drops but having them a little bit, well, not that great. If you want to check that video, I'm going to post it in the description box, but you're probably going to see it at the end of this video anyway. Nonetheless, this is their plan for changes that will go live either today, February 28th, or on March 1st, of course, Central US time, and this definitely looks very promising. So first, let's start with the inscriptions. Inscriptions are now better for the item they're on. This applies to new items earned in Anthem, not the existing ones in our vault. So whatever items we've got so far for the past weeks, whatever, those are not going to benefit from the new patch. Instead, we're going to have to find new items with better inscriptions on them, but it makes sense, and this is something that we were kinda expecting anyway. At least that's what I've seen in the community, and a lot of players have said this in the past few days. Now, if an inscription applies only to the item it is on, which is the gear item, it will be useful to that item. Otherwise, the inscription will provide a javelin-wide benefit. So this is actually a good change. There is even an example over here. An assault rifle will not have an item specific, for example, plus pistol damage inscription. It may have a plus electric damage suit wide inscription for your lightning build if you want to, but otherwise, if it does have a gear icon, it's going to be specifically for that assault rifle. So you might get something like assault rifle damage, assault rifle ammo, or whatever. And there's some information below. First, remove uncommon, white, and common green items from level 30 drop tables. And thank you, Lord, this is something that has been plaguing my playthroughs for some time now. A lot of people out there have seen this similar issue in going into the strongholds, defeating really tough encounters, and at the end of it having like an epic, a bunch of blues and then some whites and even greens. Man, that was the most annoying thing ever. So yeah, this was a highly requested change, and we agree, or well, they agree, so that's that. And I am glad that BioWare is taking all of this feedback. I'm glad that they are acting upon it, and these seem to already be most of our concerns. But let's move on. We have reduced the crafting materials needed to craft a masterwork from 25 masterwork embers to 15 masterwork embers, and this is already a significant buff to, well, crafting in general. You're going to be able to craft more items, and it never made sense to me why every other blueprint in the game requires like 5 embers to craft, while the masterwork, which is the one that is the hardest to find, requires 25 masterwork embers. I mean, that jump was a little bit too high, and 15 seems like a good start. It's a nice way in between these two, and honestly, I think I like this one better. I'm going to be able to craft many more items. It also means that I'm going to be able to, well, just get the items that I need. And by the way, since we're going to be getting much better rolls on our items, I suggest you guys keeping on those masterwork embers, as well as trying to farm as many blueprints as possible so you can straight up craft them and have them exactly as you wish. It's much better that way, because then you don't have to like base yourself off of the RNG in this game. Now, as you salvage or harvest, you should be able to craft more masterwork items to get the inscriptions you are looking for. Now that inscriptions are more relevant to their item, this should yield better results for players, and yes, it does sound like the results are going to be much better. But there's some additional inscription changes details down below, and they begin with this. It's hard to write a short version of this, but I'm going to try. if we need to add more information later, we can do that. Current, there are a large pool of inscription options available to roll on items. The inscription pools are generic. Example, weapon. Every masterwork item has 4 inscriptions. We have the major primary, the minor primary, the major secondary, and finally the minor secondary. The change is going to be this way. Each item type now has a specific set of inscription options for each of their inscription pools. The pools are smaller and are targeted to the specific item type. For example, there used to be a weapon pool, now there is an assault rifle pool, and the assault rifle pool has 4 pools for each of the inscription types listed above. Primary inscriptions are focused on damage or survivability. Any item specific inscriptions, for example the gear icon, will always benefit the item they are on, which is something we already knew. Javelin white inscriptions, which are the suit icon, will benefit damage or survivability across the whole javelin. Then secondary inscriptions focus on utility and can be targeted to the item, which is the gear, or the entire javelin, which is the suit item. There are likely a bunch of questions. We will read through the comments, and if we have an additional post to clarify things, we can work on that. Thanks again for all of your support, Ben. And there's basically the entirety of that. It was quite an extensive post. It contains more details than I was expecting, and I'm expecting for the patch notes to be even more extensive than this. But what does this mean to Anthem? Because if you may or may not realize, they haven't talked about buffing the amount of drops that we're going to get in the game, and I've talked this in the previous video when I've talked about the loot in general, and I've talked about the 2 ways in which BioWare could handle this entire situation. It seems that they have gone for better quality items instead of just showering players with useless items. We're already getting a ton of items anyway at the end of expeditions, even though most of them get salvaged, and I believe that getting showered with like random items is already good enough, but the drop rates haven't actually been directly buffed. While they have been, but not directly, they kinda have been indirectly. So with that change that pretty much reduces the whites and the greens from level 30, it pretty much means that now you're going to have to draw from a much smaller pool of items, which means that a chance for masterwork or legendary items to drop has been increased quite significantly, and somebody over here made some calculations. So for example, let's say the common items now have a 35% chance to drop, the green ones 30, blue 20, epic 10, masterwork 4%, and legendary 1%. If these were the old percentages, with the new patch it would be something like this. With the white and the green ones being completely removed from the drop tables, now we have just the blues, the epics, the masterwork, and the legendaries. These are of course just for example purposes, but you can see a little bit how that works. Of course, you're not going to get like so many blues in strongholds anyway. Like most of the time you're going to get epics. Even now with how it currently is, with the bugged loot system and all of that, we're still getting more epics on average than we're getting blues and greens and commons. So I think it's safe to say that epic with the blue here, in this example at least, could switch places, or well, in this case numbers. But other than that, I think this is a rather good change. The way that BioWare is implementing this is a rather really good way of doing it, because they have completely removed those whites and those greens, which were probably the biggest annoyance, and this reduces, as I've said, the loot table to the point that you're going to have and you're going to see much increased chances for masterwork and legendary items to drop. Now, does this mean we're going to ever go back to the Friday loot drop bug that existed for like 10 hours? No, it most definitely won't. In the previous statement that they have made, they have announced that that was an unintended consequence, it was a bug, a glitch. They didn't want that in the game, and it makes sense. I mean, there has to be a balance between having too many items to drop and having too many high qualities to drop, because this game is all around the loot chase. You'll be spending a lot of time playing this game for the purpose of getting the perfect roll item. If BioWare comes in and buffs that to the levels we had on Friday, you're not going to have that much of a loot chase in a game that is all about the loot chase, if it makes any sense. So that pretty much ends up slashing off a lot of players' playtime, so people will not play the game as much anymore because they will end up fully equipping their javelins in no time. That is the main reason why BioWare kinda has to go on a very careful line here. Whenever they address something loot-wise, they need to be careful not to make it too easy, because otherwise people will complain on the other side for the game being too easy, dropping way too many items, and there being no point in any loot chase, because the loot chase is pretty much done in a couple of days for the amount of masterworks that you'd be getting. But I think that BioWare just shot 2 birds with 1 stone. They managed to bring in more meaningful loot, as well as increasing the chances for better better quality loot to drop for players, simply for the fact that they have completely removed the useless low level items from level 30 drops. And that is basically it, guys. That is all there is with today's update. Pretty big important stuff, and expect it to drop either today, and if it doesn't, it's going to be on the 1st of March, which is basically tomorrow. So any day now we're going to have this, and I cannot wait to see it. But that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, a thumbs up would be super appreciated. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.